All right, cool. So apparently everyone I talked to yesterday enjoyed that I started with some Australian facts. So I'm going to do it today as well. Does anyone know who this is? Anyone not sitting in the front row know who this is? Hands up if you do. Like 1, 2, 3 people.
I think I heard an Australian.
Yeah, she's Australian. She was actually our Prime Minister for a couple of months. So we had a woman Prime Minister with red hair. You guys should try it out sometime, it's fun. So England invented a sport called cricket, and Australia's favourite pastime is thrashing England at cricket. We had a test series, five matches played over a series of days, and we won all 5. We also have a version of football, where in Australia you're allowed to jump on top of people and get the ball. You're also allowed to crunch them, like this. That's a lot of fun. So there you go, some Australian facts. So I'll talk about the state of this ecosystem within Spree. It's a shambles. Not true. It's actually pretty good. It's doing really well. I'm surprised that we were able to get as far as we have. Let's first of all talk about our issues. Between 2010 and 2011, we had a 7 times increase in the number of issues. It seems like a lot. And it's good, because Spree was gaining a lot of traction during that time, and people were finding that it wasn't doing what it wanted to do and what they wanted it to do, and so we had a huge increase in the amount of issues. And then at the end of 2011, something terrible happened. And then in 2012, we actually doubled the amount of issues. So on top of that 7 times increase, we actually went again. So we're almost at 2,200 issues there at the end of 2012. And then in 2013, we only had a 1.25 times increase. So kind of leveling off. And in 2014, we've decreased, we're at about 300 issues so far for the year, which is pretty on par with how we're going. Talk about the commits as well. We've always been increasing the number of commits in Spree. I'd be worried if it was going backwards. So over the same kind of period, we've increased 1.7 times, and then we're kind of always increasing by about 110%. So that's a good increase in terms of commits. My contributions to Spree are basically every day. I'm paid to work on open source, so every day on GitHub you'll see like a little green square next to where the day is. Except in May, August, and December. So in May, I was riding my bike and I crashed it quite terribly. I supermaned over the handlebars going about 40 kilometers an hour. What's that, 20 miles? 25 miles an hour. Supermaned it, crashed onto my left arm and broke up here. Terrible. Got me out of commission for about all of 2 days. So I was trying to type, and it was not good. I was actually using the dictate feature on Mac OS X, and it's fantastic. I was talking on IRC, I was holding down the function key, talking, and then my words appeared on the screen perfectly. So I was able to do some work based off that. Then in August, I took a vacation. This was like my only vacation for the entire year, apart from Christmas. So Christmas you have to have off because you've got to go see your family and whatnot. So every other day I'm working on open source. That's part of the reason the commits are so high. And Sean talked about this. He said that once I joined Spree, all the commits shut up. And they have, and it's not just myself, it's all the contributors as well. So you can see here at the beginning of 2012, we had not much happening at all, and then it just rocketed. So that's pretty awesome. And it stayed that way for forever. In terms of contributors, though, we've always been increasing, year upon year upon year. So we had a 1.5 times increase between 2010 and 2011, and then we had almost a 2 times increase between 2011 and 2012. And then between 2012 and 2013, we had a 120% increase in the number of contributors. I'm hoping that we can keep up that number in 2014 and keep getting more people on. I think with our new clients and all the people here who are using Spree, we can get some good contributors going. Excuse me. I wasn't sure if I was going to burp or swallow then. Decided to do both. It's very interesting. Talk about the number of comments as well. So the number of comments really indicates the level of engagement on top of Spree. So between 2010 and 2011, we had a 6 times increase in the number of comments. So that's a sign that Spree was really growing during that period of time. And then between 2011 and 2012, we had a huge spike of 3 times. And now it's kind of leveled out again. So we're still increasing the number of comments, which is increasing the number of people who are engaging with Spree on the Spree project. This is just all the comments across all the projects on the Spree organization. And I love that that's almost very close to 10,000, which is a magical number for me. I think this year we'll get more than 10,000 comments on all the projects across GitHub, which is a really cool number. On top of all that, Spree's been downloaded over 250,000 times, which is really nice. So there's at least 250,000 people rather, who have used Spree. And then also, there's been 11,137 GitHub notifications, not total, just last year. 11,137 issue comments or issues or pull requests across Spree for the entire year. 3,000 of those were mine, though. And then, on top of that, there was 4,076 mailing list posts. Again, not across the whole 2010 to whatever it was now. What is it? What year is it? 2014? So there's 4,076 mailing list posts last year, which is huge. And we've had 71,045 IRC messages last year. Huge. So the amount of information and the amount of engagement in the community, I love it. It's really great. Sometimes, though, it feels like this. Although more relevant for New York's weather currently, it feels like that. Feels like you're trying to drink from the fire hose, and it gets a bit overwhelming. So I have two ways of dealing with it. I have this email client now called Airmail, and it has Gmail shortcuts, and it's so fast. So I just go through all my emails, E, and if you use Gmail, you know that's the archive one. Then I also have, my inbox count is kind of crazy. It's about double this at the moment, because I haven't really been replying. I also have Mailbox, which is probably the best email client ever invented. My favorite feature of it is that I'm able to move all the emails in my inbox, as long as it's under 50, to later on. So if I'm like, I don't care anymore, I just want to shove everything out of the way, move it to tomorrow or after the weekend, I can do that. And then it doesn't show up on my phone as an icon saying, hey, you should read me. So that's nice. Another great thing about the Spree community is that we don't really engage in any kind of flame wars. Like Sean said, we don't put up with any nonsense. And not like there is any nonsense to put up with. It's just, we're just really nice people. And I love that. We keep that up, and it's really great. There's other communities that aren't as lucky. There's a community, I'm not going to name it because I was told not to name it, but this guy started out like his first. So he posted an issue on a GitHub project, and then the maintainers replied to that post. And then he replied, and at the end of his reply was this phrase, in short, I am not your QA bitch. That's way more than passive-aggressive. That's not even passive-aggressive, that's just aggressive. He also said, the reflexive behavior of putting work off onto contributors is frankly repugnant. What does that even mean? I mean, so you have this project that has, 8 maintainers, and you expect them to do all the work? It's not going to work. On Spree, we've had 500 contributors who have built up the framework over time. And our core team, the people who work on the open source stuff, I think we've got Peter, Washington, and myself, who are the main people who work on that. There's contributions from the other people, but Peter, Washington, and myself are really just the core team there. So after that issue was filed, this project created a code of conduct. And we don't need one of these on Spree because we have such a nice community. And I love the code of conduct because it strongly values the contributors from anywhere, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, disability, and so on. And it also provides a harassment-free experience for everyone who participates in the development of the project, which means that it's not just the maintainers who have to stay away from harassing the people who are submitting patches. It's like, this patch is shit, I hate it. It's also the people who are submitting the patches who should not say that your project is shit, I hate it. So the code of conduct enforces that behavior. So on Spree, it's all sunshine and rainbows. I love it. It's just so great. But sometimes we need to have a little bit of quality control. Speaking of quality control, water, how good is it? So we have a contributing guide. And so when you're filing an issue on the Spree project, we just ask you to provide some details about it. You can say, when I try and check out this item through the cart, it breaks. Okay, that's acknowledging there is a problem there, but we really need the information about that problem in order to debug it. So we need a comprehensive list of steps to reproduce the issue. First and foremost, step 1, you clicked on the product. Step 2, you added it to the cart. Step 3, an error appeared. Okay, cool. Second thing, what you're expecting to happen and what's actually happening. So you're expecting the cart to have the product in it, but it's actually showing you this exception instead. And the version of Spree and the version of Rails. So the version of Spree is important because if you don't show that, we'd have no idea like what's going on. Like version 2.1 is going to perform differently to 2.2. And so we're going to be not going to be able to debug it as easy. And the version of Rails is also important. We've had a problem in 2.0, Spree 2.0, where certain versions of Rails would break it. And you'd have to upgrade to the latest Spree, which would upgrade you to the latest Rails. Your application's complete gem file is also extremely helpful because it tells us what gems you're using. And some gems might be interfering with Spree. And some people have posted it as an image rather than text. Slightly frustrating. Very hard to copy and paste an image. Any relevant stack traces? Absolutely important. If something is throwing an exception, we need to see where that exception is coming from. And with this information, we get so much better issues than we did before. So thank you for those people who file issues about, who follow that guide. And I want to talk about pull requests too. So we maintain quality control through pull requests as well. We have this command called hub. The hub gem is really awesome for open source stuff. So we pull in the pull request. I pull it into my private repository, or my fork of Spree. And then it goes off to the CI server, and the CI server vets it. It runs it against core, API, backend, and frontend. And then if each of those components passes, all well and good. Then it goes off to Spree, and eventually it gets put into a gem release and released to the world. But let's say that your PR just happens to break one aspect of Spree. Then, in which case, then I'll go ahead and try and fix it myself. And if I can fix it, then it will go back into the CI server. If I can't fix it, I'll write a comment on the pull request, and I'll ask you to fix it. If you can't fix it, then I'll keep trying until I can. Once it's green on CI again, same process. Goes off to Spree, gets released as a gem. It's really awesome. I love TeamCity. It's a completely different talk, though. So Spree has a release policy as well to ensure that releases aren't affected, so we don't get major changes happening in releases that we would classify as stable. So we have the master branch, for instance. The master branch gets all of these things. It gets new features, it gets patches, minor fixes, major fixes, and security releases. Next branch down, 2.2 stable, doesn't get any new features. Once we release a stable branch, so we've released 2.2, it's locked. There's not going to be any new features on that branch, but there will be patches to those features that we already have had. So if the adjustment system has a bug in it, we're going to create a patch for that. It's going to have minor fixes, anything major, like it's throwing an exception when it really shouldn't, or it's not accounting in certain ways. We'll fix that, and security patches. And the same thing goes for each different branch after that. So 2.1 stable doesn't get patches. 2.0 stable doesn't get minor fixes, it only gets major ones. And 1.3 stable and below gets security patches. And with the release policy, we ensure that the releases that have already been done are going to remain stable for the long term. So I'm going to run through some extensions as well. So we've got some extensions on Spree. You might have heard of them. First one I want to talk about is Spree auth device. I think it was Spree 1.2 that we ripped out the auth component from Spree and moved it off into its own extension. What this enables you to do is if you have an application that already has its own authentication, you can bolt Spree into that application and then use that application's authentication. But if you don't have that already, you can go ahead and use this extension. Simple. We have another extension called Spree Social. So if you don't have authentication at all and you want to use Facebook or Twitter or, God forbid, Google+, you can go ahead and do that by using Spree Social. And the reason that happens is because of other open source efforts like OmniAuth. If OmniAuth didn't exist, we would have to write all this code to connect in with Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and all the other 10 million social networks out there. LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's so bad. Yeah, if they didn't exist, if OmniAuth didn't exist, we would have to write all this code. So we're really standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to that. The Spree Gateway also depends on a huge open source effort called Active Merchant. Shopify, who's one of our competitors admittedly, released this great gem ages ago called Active Merchant, and they have done all the efforts of talking to the different payment gateways. So the different payment gateways that talk in SOAP and JSON and all other bastardized formats of XML, Shopify's gone, yeah, no worries, we'll just deal with that and we'll release it as open source. And it's perfect. We build off that and we have Spree Gateway. So we support all those different payment gateways. If you were here for the partner training this morning, you would have seen Melissa's slide with about a bazillion payment gateways that are supported through Active Merchant. We can do that. Spree Gateway at the moment only supports 23 gateways, but it's super easy to add another gateway. Just look at the classes that are already existing within Gateway and just add whatever gateway you wish to have. Yes, that's what I just said, slide. Thank you. Except if you're using PayPal. PayPal is its own special and beautiful snowflake. I don't like PayPal. We have an extension called Spree PayPal Express, and it's, I don't know who wrote the code. I don't want to ever meet them for safety reasons. Hi, it's you. Oh, hi. Which day? Drunk which day? It's written over a series of months. Are you an alcoholic? Do you need help?
He's Irish.
Should we have an intervention for Brian? Oh, he's Irish. True. Yes, he's always drunk. It's PayPal. It's PayPal, though. We understand. So I love PayPal. I love it. It's so good. It's like I expect the checkout to work in this way, so I click the button and I go through PayPal and I sign in and I enter my credit card details, and then it works. I'm like, yes, great. So I run a test and it does all the same steps, and it doesn't work. Okay, so you go through the checkout again manually, and you fill in your email address and the credit card details, you hit submit, and it breaks. Like, okay, cool. I can replicate it. So you write another test, and you go through the steps, and the test works. For God's sake. So PayPal's API sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work. And it's really, really confusing. Despite this, though, I decided I would take upon myself to write an extension called Spree Better PayPal Express. I'm now the maintainer of Spree's PayPal Express extension, and it hasn't affected my sanity yet. So if you want to use PayPal with Spree, don't use Gateway and don't use Spree PayPal Express. Please use this extension instead. Yeah? Yeah? Daniel Pritchett is using it. He says it's good. Anyone else using Spree Better PayPal Express? Thank you. Good. There's more stuff coming on that later on. I don't mean during this talk. I mean like future development. Speaking of future development, look, there's a slide. It says the future. Wow. What's the future mean? Well, for Spree, the future means that we're going to be having store credits. So I said yesterday during my adjustments talk, I mentioned credits about 1 million times. What it means is that, hey, we screwed up your order. Here, have $20. Or we value your customer. We value you as a customer. Have this discount. We'll be working on that in the future versions of Spree. Stock returns is another big thing. I know the Surf Dome guys, we had a big talk about that while I was in London. A big, big talk about that while we were in London. And my mind was, it's a really complex situation, and to account for all the little nitty-gritty things that people have, all the rules they have, it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to get there, though. We have, at the moment, what we have is a stock return. Underneath that, we have a refund. And then if you're going to exchange an item, it'll be something else. So it won't be a refund, and then a refund is either a refund or an exchange. There'll be a refund and an exchange. So, yeah, we're working on it. An improved API. At the moment, what we have in the API is it's built with Rabble, and we're considering changing a couple of things with that. So what we have at the moment is if you access /products, it returns a top-level key, products, which contains all the products underneath it. However, if you go to products /products/1, it returns you a top-level key for each single attribute in the product. So you have a top-level key ID, name, price, whatever else underneath that. Some APIs, some JavaScript frameworks, Ember, really struggle with this. So we're going to fix that up. And we're going to make it closer towards what JSONAPI.org describes as being a proper API. We're working on it. We know there's some problems. We'll fix that up. Sales and sales pricing. If you ever wanted to discount a price of a product, have you ever wanted to do that? Yeah? Hands up if you have. Yeah? Have you ever wanted historical information to see if that price affected the sales of that item? Yes. Good. We'll be working on that in the future. Multi-store support. Who wants multi-store support? My goodness, we get an email about this every day almost. It's crazy. It's like, can we have an Etsy-like marketplace? No, you can't. Go away. Actually, we'd love to be able to support that because Spree should support that. So we'll be having a multi-store support in the future as well. Improved preferences. We're having a discussion with the free-running tech guys and Jeff Dutil last night. When you have, say, a promotion rule of an item total, that has a preference. So when you look up that item total record, it looks that up, and then it looks up the preferences, one at a time, until it loads all the preferences. What we will be doing instead is moving that into a serialized column in that table. So what you'd have on a promotion rule is you'd have a serialized array, or serialized hash rather, of all the preferences. On a payment method, same deal. It would just be a serialized thing. And a couple other changes around the preferences stuff. So the preferences stuff is a bit confusing at the moment. We'll be looking to improve that. We'll also be looking to integrate this extension called Spree Bootstrap Frontend into the actual front end of Spree. We actually have at the moment a framework called Skeleton. Who uses Skeleton at the moment and enjoys it? One person. I think he's just putting his hand up all the time. So we'll be switching over to Bootstrap, most likely, for the front end. For the back end, it's a big task. We'll probably be doing that as well at some point. Bootstrap is by far the best, has the best community, and in my opinion, has the best documentation. I think based off, because it has the best community, it has the best documentation, which is good. So we will be doing that in the future also. One thing we won't be doing in the future is handing out free kittens and puppies. I know how much you guys like kittens and puppies, but I'm sorry. You can have a picture of kittens and puppies, though, instead, as a consolation prize, I guess. And that's really all I have time for today. I am Ryan Bigg. I am the token Australian at SpreeCommerce. Thank you.
Any questions? There's one back there.
So I'm curious about how you prioritize which issues and pull requests you look at so that I can get my very important issues before everyone else.
Right. Okay. Is this on still?
Try it again.
How about now? Yay! Cool. All right. So I should have talked to you about that when I was doing the airmail and mailbox stuff. So I wake up in the morning and I see that I've got some email. I'm like, okay, cool. And what I'll see is that I've got some unread email. So I'll go through the unread email first and see what the quick wins are. And I'll move those to later on in the day. So after breakfast, I look at those unread email, and then I process those. So if there's like a small patch for Spree IITNN or even just a Spree gem, I'll pull that in. And that will be just baking against CI for the day. And then while I work on other things, that'll be going on CI. And then later on in the day, I'll merge that in. So I'll try and get some quick wins out of the way, because it's a really, really good way to start the day. I highly recommend getting some quick wins out of the day to really start your day, because it's amazing. If you're just always pushing on the same features, and every day you wake up and it's the same thing, it's the same thing, it's the same thing, it gets a bit exhausting, so I try and get some really quick wins. So if you have a small pull request, chances are it'll get merged that same day. If you have a bigger one, it might take a day or two to get merged. Answer your question?
Yes.
Cool.
Hey, Ryan.
Hi.
You mentioned store credits.
Yes.
Are you gonna be pulling the Spree store credits extension in, or are you gonna put it right from scratch?
We'll be looking at what that does well, and we'll be also looking at what it doesn't do well, and then implementing that implementation. So it depends, really. I've got to research what that does. Yeah, most likely though. If it works for people, then it works. Any questions on this side of the room, or is everyone still hungover?
One in back.
On and back. Cool. Bronston.
Have you ever thought about moving the Spree guides into Spree's individual, they're like Spree's repo, so we can send one pull request to
Deja
update both?
vu. I feel like we talked about this drunkenly last night.
And I'd like to make sure it's still on the table.
Yeah, I should have talked about that. I think it's a really good idea having the guides in the same repository, because that way then you can submit a pull request for a new feature and then you can update the guide, or you can tweak something and then update the guide, so you don't have to have two pull requests. It's also easy for me because there's less typing for me involved. I just merge one pull request instead of two pull requests. So yeah, I definitely think it's valid.
So related to store credits, sort of similar problem, have you dealt much with gift cards, either as a gem or as in integrating with gift card services?
No, not yet. But that was also in the future thing. That was one of the things. I literally wrote the future slides this morning while during Sean's talk. So gift vouchers is definitely something we're going to look at doing as well. So you should be able to buy a product, and then you should be able to use that product or that gift voucher later on in the store to buy for your order, which would also be linked to the multiple payment stuff. So you should be able to pay you have a $100 order, but you only have a $20 gift card. You should be able to pay $20 on the gift card and $80 on something else. Or you should be able to use like multiple credit cards as well. So there's a lot of work involved in doing that. Answer your question? Cool.
There's one over here.
One right there.
Hey, do you have any plans? I mean, what are the priorities for the stuff you mentioned? Like, what's going to be released first, or does it really depend on who's contributing what? And do you have the second kind of question is, do you have any plans to kind of further encourage people to contribute things like hackathons or some kind of events?
Okay. The priority for the things is really dependent on what we feel like doing. So we've got the stock return stuff, which we've already started working on. So most likely that'll be in 2.3. Once we get that out, then I guess the Bootstrap front-end thing might be the next, or the improved API past that. Credits and gift vouchers, more of a future thing, because we haven't started even talking about that really internally. So yeah, it'll be a future thing. Regarding hackathons, though, we haven't started doing that. We probably should, but it's because we're all spread out all over the world. I mean, we've got people here from almost all I think 5 continents, right?
We do them on IRC all the time.
Yeah, and we do them on IRC all the time. So if you ever want to contribute to Spree, just come onto the Spree IRC channel, or even on the mailing list, and say, hey, I want to contribute to Spree. Do you have anything that I can work on? And we'll point you in the right direction for that.
Any other questions? No one ever wants to use Wes's microphone.
Sorry, Wes.
All right. All right, thanks very much, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excellent talk.